So if you guys can just put, and I put the code up too, so if you want to take this Quizizz more than once, make sure you got it. On Google Classroom is the code for your class period. So I will give you a grade if you are working on it and make sure, not that if you get 100, but seeing that you're trying multiple times without just looking at the answers to try to get the same answer. And so you can do that on Google Classroom. I'll happily give you 100 for doing that. But for right now, I want to make sure everyone's computers are down. And we want to make sure we got all this down. Again, I sat there and looked at your tests, and I made questions that go to your tests. So if you don't understand any of these, then when you get to your test, you're not going to understand it. So make sure to put all those devices away. Everyone has a utensil. We're ready to go. So we're going to be going over this one. So first, another word for slope is what? Rate of change. What would initial amount be? What would that? The y-intercepts, right? Domain would be your x, and output would be your y. So the only thing rate or rate of change means slope. So you want to make sure you're putting the answers down. This is your study guide. Jarrell is joining Planet, it's supposed to say Planet Fitness. The startup fee is $100 when he signs up and then costs $20 per month. So which one would be my slope? 20, because that word per means it's going to be my slope. So I know 20 should be next to x. And the startup fee is $100, so that would be my y-intercept. And so the equation that's written like that is this one right here, 20x plus 100. Yeah. So the next question says, how many months has he been going to the gym if he paid $220? So we need to figure out, okay, what's going on here? It's $20 per what? Month. So I know that X means month. What does Y represent? Total money. And so when they're asking me to plug in money, would I plug that in for X or Y? If they're asking me to plug in money, would that be considered my X, my months, or my total money? Your Y, your total money. So instead of Y, I'm going to write 220 equals 20x plus 100. And then you're going to solve. In case you forget how to solve and you're just having a little, brain fart, what could you do with your answer choices? Plug each of them in for X and figure out which one gets you 220. But the easier way is just to solve. So first I need to get the constant over to this side. How do I do that? Subtract 100 on both sides. And when I do that, you end up getting 20x equals 120. Then how do you get x by itself? You divide. And you end up getting x equals what? 6. And so we know x stands for months, so we know that makes sense. 6 months. So that would be my answer for this. So remember, you guys should be taking this over and over again. The point is to not get 100 on there. I want to see that you're practicing and not just looking at the answers and putting them in. We're going over them anyways. If you know how to do this, then you're golden for the test. The next one says, Joe started with $1,000 in his bank account. Each week he spent $15. So $1,000, would that be your slope or your y-intercept? Your y-intercept, right? So that's what he's starting with. That's my B. So right away, which ones can I eliminate that don't have 1,000 as your y-intercept? C and D, because these are the slopes. Then if you're spending something, would that be a negative slope or a positive? Negative, right? So if he's spending $15 each time, that would be negative 15x equals y. So your answer would be A here. And so these are going basically in this, I'm even putting them in the same order as your test was going to look. Then it says, how much will he have in his account after 10 weeks? So we know it's $15 per what? Week, right? So we know that X is week, and they want to know how many after 10 weeks. So I know I'm probably going to be plugging it in for X. just solving for the total amount of money. Negative 15 times 10 ends up being negative 150. Plus 1,000, what do you end up getting? 850. And so 850 is how much would be in his account after 10 weeks. Does that make sense? Especially you want to think, okay, if he's spending money after 10 weeks, there's no way he's going to have more than he started with. So that doesn't even make sense. Bailey started out with a set amount of tennis balls. Each week, Bailey loses a specific amount of tennis balls under the couch. The equation for the situation is represented by this function, which represents the slope. So what here would represent the slope? -2. This is going to be on your test, something like this. Remember, x is negative. She loses 2 balls per week, but the slope itself is just -2. They're going to try to trick you on that. Does that make sense? Then what does 20 represent? Is it the amount of balls she loses each week, or the amount of tennis ball she begins with? B, the one she begins with, right? Because that's your y-intercept. Next one is your slope. So this is that weird one that's on your check for understanding too. So that's one where they want you to split it apart so it looks like this. Now, what's the invisible coefficient that goes next to the x1, right? So you can see this is an answer choice. They're trying to trick you. But in slope, x should not be in your answer. So what would be your slope here? 1/3. What would -2 be then? -6 divided by 3. What would that be if it's not your slope? Your b or your y-intercept. But here they want the slope, so I know my answer is that. Be careful. A lot of people start flipping it and they see it's a fraction. They're multiplying by reciprocals. No, they just want you to separate it so it looks like this. One of these will be on your test. I literally am not showing you anything that won't be on there. This one, what is the slope of the following? So I saw some of you guys are on Delta Math on this. They want you to get what letter by itself when we move this around? Y, right? So first, how do I get 3x to the other side? Subtract. Can I combine these two right there? No, because they're not like terms. And don't drop that negative. You get -4y equals -3x plus 12. Then how do you get rid of that -4? Divide each term by -4. When you do that, what does a negative over a negative make? Positive. So this crossed out, you get y equals 3/4 x, and 12 divided by -4 is -3. Which one's your slope? 3/4. Because it's next to x. This will be, most likely, I think, it is a open-ended. So you know that if it's in standard form, you need to turn it to slope intercept form. Does that make sense? Okay, next one. Same question. It said, first of all, what is the y-intercept here? In this question. What is it? -2. So you could see number 11 is asking for the y-intercept. I thought we were good. Is it the same question or no?
Scroll down. It is.
Oh, what's the y-intercept of that one? Sorry. -3. So it's the same question here. So you know your y-intercept will be -3 for that one. Your x-intercept, what do you have to plug in for y? It's always the same number. What do we have to plug into y to get our x-intercept? 0. So you plug in 0 for the other one to get the other intercept. So if we're solving for x, we're getting our x-intercept. Anything times 0, remember, just crosses out. So you end up getting 3x equals 12. Then how do you get x by itself? Divide. And what do you end up getting? X equals 4. These are going to be open-ended on your test. And so how would I write that point? 4, comma, 0, right? Because we plugged in 0 for y, so B would be your answer. To get your y-intercept here, you could still plug in 0 for x and solve, and you would get the same answer. You're also going to have to look at a graph like this. Where is my x-intercept? Right here, right? What point is that? 5, 0. And what is this called? This line called? X-axis. That's going to be on your test. X-axis, the one that goes up and down. Remember, if you could write a y with it, is your y-axis. Next one. What is your y-intercept here? Good. So it would be 0, -3. See, they'll try to trick you. They'll try to put it as your x coordinate, but we know those x, y. And so since we're finding our y-intercept, that's the number we're filling in. The center of a coordinate plane 0, 0 is known as your what? Origin. Remember, 0, 0, origin, they all start with the same letter number. It looks the same. So I remember 0, 0, 0. 12. Did I skip it? Oh, the x-intercept was right there. It was the same question. One says x, one says y. The y-intercept is where the line crosses the what? Y-axis. So the question looks like this. I want to make sure you know how it's worded. So make sure you guys are focusing, paying attention. Because remember, these tests you can't make up. They're 40% of your grade. You want to make sure you're ready for it. So it says, what is the value of the parameter m for the line passing through points 5, -2, 1, 10? If you ever see 2 points, you know you're finding the what? You see 2 points. What do you think you're going to be finding? Or what does m represent? Slope. So first thing you do, and we'll give you the slope formula, but we're not going to say, hey, make sure you use the slope formula for this one, but we're not going to be doing that. We're just going to give you a formula sheet, and you'll need to know to look for that formula. So I label and I plug it in, 10 minus -2 over 1 minus 5. When you put that in your calculator, you'll end up getting 12 over -4. And what is 12 divided by -4? -30. So your slope, or your m, will be -30. This one, it says which scenario can represent this graph. So you can see the y-intercept is at 30. And I know words that mean y-intercept are initial, starting, beginning. So I know that initially it should start with 30. Right here we see initially starts with 5, so I know that can't be it. And then if they're talking about saving and it's going up, would spends be in the answer? No, right? Because they're talking about saving. Then you need to find the slope, which is rise over run. And if you look, this is going by 5s, so it went up 5 over 1. So since the slope is 5 over 1, you would know 5 is your slope. So remember, you just do rise over run, but you've got to look at the axes we're talking about. Does that make sense? Okay. What is the slope? What does a horizontal line look like? Is it side to side or up and down? Side to side. So what would be the slope of a line that goes side to side like that?
0.
0. Remember, if you can make a z, you know it's 0. What is the slope of a vertical line? Undefined. Remember, I can make a u with it. And I know v and u are next to each other in the alphabet, so I know vertical lines are undefined. Is this a horizontal line or a vertical line? Horizontal. And then what would the slope be? Not undefined. 0, because you can make a z with it, or you could do rise over run and you would still get 0. What is the equation of this graph? This is going to be on your test, so we didn't really harp on it, and I want to make sure you know it. So, what is the y coordinate here? Y equals -4. That would be your answer. Even if we wrote it in slope-intercept form, we know our slope is 0, and we know our y-intercept is -4. You don't need to put 0x. You can just write y equals -4. The following is an example of a vertical line. We know the slope is what? undefined, because I can make a U with it, for undefined. And what would the equation be? Yeah, x equals 3. And we know since it has an undefined slope, we know the equation's not going to look normal. It's not going to look like y equals mx plus b. So it's going to look something like this, x equals 3, because all the x's here are 3s. So if I plotted any of these points, all of the x's would be 3, no matter what. Now there's a few different ways you can go about doing this. You can find the x and y intercepts. You can put it in slope-intercept form. So if I was finding the x and y intercepts, I would plug in 0 for each one and solve. So anything times 0 is 0. And so you end up getting 5y equals negative 10. How do you get y by itself? Divide. And so what's your y-intercept end up equaling? Negative 2. So which one does the y-intercept not equal negative 2? C, right? C, it's at 3. All these are negative 2. Now let's find the x-intercept. So I do the same thing, but instead of y, I'm going to plug in 0. And so this would cross out. You get 2x equals negative 10. How do you get x by itself? Divide. And you end up getting x equals what? Negative 5. So which one has an x-intercept of negative 5? The one I wrote on top of. See right here. That negative 5. So I know this would be my answer. Even if you did it in slope-intercept form and found the y-intercept and the slope, you would still get the same answer. So it doesn't matter which, this is going to be a multiple choice question, so I don't care how you get the answer. Does that make sense? Okay, we're almost done. So this one is, these are the type of questions that you just had on your check for understanding. So it says, what's the equation of the line that goes through that point and has a slope of negative 3/4? So first we're going to write down y equals mx plus b. And so this is definitely a lesson that has open-ended on it. No matter what class you're in, you're still going to have the same test. And we have to kind of rush through it. So you want to make sure you got this down. Then I know my slope is negative 3/4, so I'm going to plug that in for m. Then see how this point is not 0, a number? I need to plug that in. I can't just put a y-intercept because that's not my y-intercept. So I'm going to plug that in for x and that in for y. And I'm going to solve for my b. So when I do this, it looks something like this. Does everyone know how to put this into your calculator? You could put the ND button, put the fraction in, put the side button, and put parentheses negative 4. When you do that, you should get 3. So you end up getting 1 equals 3 plus b. How do you get b by itself? Subtract 3. And you end up getting b equals negative 2. So your slope, you know, is negative 3/4, and your y-intercept is negative 2. So you know that would be your answer. Does that make sense? Which equation has a y-intercept of 6 and a slope of negative 2? Don't think too hard about this one. It's just negative 2 is your slope, 6 is your y-intercept. There's going to be a question that is here. What is the equation of the line that passes through those 2 points? We just did something similar on your check for understanding. So first, we know our y-intercept is 8, right? Because our x is 0. So I know automatically my y-intercept is going to be 8. Which one can I cross out that's not 8? It doesn't have a y-intercept of 8. D, right? Then all you do is label and plug it into the slope formula. When you do that, it's 0 minus 8 over 2 minus 0, which you get negative 8 over 2. And what does that equal? Negative 4. So your equation should be negative 4x plus 8. You're also going to have a table questions that look like this. Remember, what could I do with my answer choices if I totally forget how to do this? Because it is multiple choice. What could I do with these to figure out which one works? Plug them in. We could plug them in. So I can literally take this point 2, 5. I could plug it in here, and I should get 5 as my y. This is not the way I want you to do it, but in case you forget. forgot, I can sit here and go, okay, what is 4 times 2? 8 plus 1. Does that equal 5? I know that can't be my answer. Let's try this one. What's 4 times 2? Minus 3. Could be that answer. What's 4 times 2? 8. It's not 5. And when I go here, 5 times 2 is 10 minus 3. 7. Is that 5? No. So automatically, I can use guess and check to figure out which answer that is.
And sometimes you have more than one that could be the answer, so make sure you plug in 2 points to double check.
The other way you can do it is find the rise over run. So from 1 to 5, what's the change in y? Adding 4. From 1 to 2, what's the change in x? Adding 1. What's 4 divided by 1? 4. And then you can write exactly what we did up here, y equals mx plus b. And we can plug a point in for x and y and solve. So it doesn't matter which point, I'll plug in this one. I'm going to plug in 2 for x and 5 for y and solve. So members, it might not be multiple choice, you do have to go through this. And so you end up getting 5 equals 8 plus b. How do you get b by itself? Subtract 8, and you get b equals negative 3, God bless you. So you know that b is negative 3. It doesn't matter which point you would plug in. So you are going to have one open-ended like this, but you're also going to have one multiple choice. Does that make sense? Okay. So these word problems, we didn't have time to really work on that much, and I want to make sure you got it. It's pretty simple. And so all you're doing, see how it's 2 situations. So after this happens, this is it. After this happens, this is the answer. So like you pull a plug from backup. After 40 seconds, there are 13 gallons of water left. After 1 minute, now see how they're in different units? How many seconds is 1 minute? 60. So automatically I'm going to write 60 seconds because I know they're going to try to trick me. After 60 seconds, there's 10 gallons left. And so you would label it 40, 13, 60, 10. So your Y's stand for gallons, your X's stand for seconds, and so you know the answer would be this one right here. Then they want you to find the slope, or they're going to call it the rate, because remember, rate of change, slope mean the same thing. So all you're going to do is label, plug it in. So I do 10 minus 13 over 60 minus 40, and you would get negative 3 over 20. So your answer would be A. Sorry, I'm trying to go fast so that you guys have enough time. Next one, it asks for the entire equation. This is going to be your last open-ended question. It's going to look like this. So the first part is going to be writing it as points. The second part is going to be finding the rate. This third part is going to be writing the equation. So that's where we have to write it like this. Y equals negative 3 over 20x plus b. And you choose a point to plug in. Doesn't matter which one, but it has to be the same x and y together. So I'm going to choose 60 and 10. So instead of x, I'm going to plug in 60. Instead of y, I'm going to plug in 10. And I'm going to solve for b. And this is right from that extra credit that I had given you, that word problem, if you've done it. So 10 equals, and when you put this in, you end up getting negative 180 over 20, which ends up being negative 90, plus b.
9.
Oh, thank you. Negative 9 plus b. Then how do you get b by itself? Add 9, right? I don't know why. I add 9 to both sides. And what is 10 plus 9? 19. So your y-intercept would be 19, which is this one. Is there more? Is that that? There's that. So these are the tables. So what is the rate? This is how the open-ended will be. So what is the rate? Remember, you find the change in y over the change in x. So from here to here, what's happening? Not adding. Subtract 2. Because the negatives are getting bigger, yeah. From 3 to 6, what's happening? Not minus, it's 3. Adding 3, right? We will read a table from the top to the bottom. And so your slope would be negative 2/3. I can't reduce that. The y-intercept, you can either work backwards or, remember, we write the equation y equals negative 2/3 x plus b. And you would take a point and plug it in for x and y. So I can take this point right here if I wanted to, and plug it in for x and y and solve for b. Any point, but make sure it's not like this one and that one. It has to be together. So if I do that, it would look something like this. And so when you do this, it's negative 7 equals, what's negative 2/3 times 11? You put it, what is it? Oh, put it right into your head. Negative 22 divided by 3.
Negative 22 divided by 3.
Yeah. What is that?
It would be like, you can't simplify it. Negative 7.3 something.
Did I put the wrong answer in here? So how do you get your d by itself? Add 7.3. That's how I put the wrong answer. And so you'd end up getting 0.3 equals your y-intercept. And so that answer is not on here, so now I need to change it. But that's how you go about finding your y-intercept. Does that make sense? And so we're going to be going, we'll go over a few more. I'm going to make sure to put the answer key to the check for understanding that you guys have been taking. But this is also the makeup one. It's also in order of each lesson. So you, and that's how your test, I made sure to go through your test and make sure it was in this order as well. So you guys are ready.
It should be 0, 1.
I think the table's not there.
Got it.
No, you don't need to do the quizzes, but you want to maybe try